Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Daf Mem Aleph of Bava Metzia, Bava Metzia 41. Today's Daf Yomi is going to be dedicated for Yeshua, for Am Yisrael, Hatzalah for the Shvuyim, and Shmira for the Chayalim. Says the Daf Yomi, Hamafkid Chavis Eitzel. Excuse me. Says the Daf Yomi, Hamafkid Chavis Eitzel Chavero. Somebody who deposits a barrel. We're starting on the bottom of 40b at the Mishnah. Somebody who deposits a barrel with his friend, and the owner didn't say where you should keep the barrel. Then, under those circumstances, and he moves the barrel. Basically, the watchman moves the barrel. Vinishtabra, and it breaks. If he moves it on his own, meaning to say for his own purposes, if when he moved it, the watchman broke the barrel, then if he moved it for his own purposes, chayav, then it's like he's almost like a thief, and so then he's going to be responsible. But if he moves it for the barrel's purposes, then he's patur, then he's exempt. But, says the Mishnah, if when the place where he puts it down, then it breaks. So if basically, if he didn't break it, but when he put it in the place that was watched, it broke, then bein l'tzarcha patur. Then whether or not he moved it for his own purposes or for its purposes, it's going to be responsible. But let's say yichadu abal makom. Let's say the owner's designated a place, and then v'tiltu avinishbra, he moved it, and after he moved it, it broke. Whether he broke it or after he put it down, if he put it down for its own purposes, his own needs, then it's going to be responsible. But for the barrel's needs, it's going to be exempt. So the Gemara is saying that under these circumstances, we're going in the first clause of the Mishnah that even if he took it for his own purposes, that so even if he took the barrel for his own purposes, he's like a thief, and so therefore, since if he takes it for his own purposes, he's like a thief, and so therefore he's like a thief who's using it. Nevertheless, if he returns it to its place, it says in the Mishnah that that if he turns it to its place, if after he returns it to its place, then whether he had taken it for his own needs or the needs of the barrel is going to be exempt. So even though he had taken it for his own needs, so he's i.e. like a thief, once he puts it down, he's going to be exempt. So the Gemara says that this is the position of Rabbi Shmuel. Amani, the first clause of our Mishnah is like Rabbi Shmuel, who says, who says we don't need the consent of the owner. Hold on one second. So it says we don't need the consent of the owner because we don't, that he put it back when he watches the, because when he watches it, the thief watches it, and now he wants to return it. He doesn't need to tell the owner that he's returned it because he puts it down. He didn't tell the owner, and still we're going to say he's exempt. The Tanya Gonev Tolam and Adar, because we've already had this price earlier in our Gemara. Oh, we had it at the end of Baba Kama. If somebody says that if you steal a lamb from a flock, the salmon akis, or a coin from a wallet, Malcolm Shagan of Yachzir, you just have to return it to the place he took it. So therefore, this person puts it down, and it hadn't been told exactly where to return it, and still we're going to say he's exempt. That's the position of Rabbi Yishmael, because basically he returned it, and we're going to say that under those circumstances he's exempt. Whereas Rabbi Kiva says, Tzarech das ba'alam. Rabbi Kiva says on top of Mem, you need to tell the owner that you returned it, otherwise you're going to be chayiv. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel. Well, if you want to say that the first clause is Rabbi Shmuel, Why do we say if he didn't designate the place? I feel yachado nami. Then even if he had designated the place, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter that he took it without permission. I feel yachado nami. Even though it would be the case that even if he had designated a place, when he returned it to its place, he's going to be exempt because he's returned it. So the Gemara says, "Lo mi buy cover." No, we have to read this first quote of the Mishnah as not only this. Lo mi buy yichado. Not only the place where he designated the place, designated where he wanted it to go to Mekomohu. Not only there where he moved it to its place, do we lo bayin and das balim. Not only in that case do we not require the owner. Even if he didn't designate a specific place, because this is not any specific place for the barrel. Nevertheless, he's going to be exempt. The watchman is going to exempt because we don't need the consent of the owner, and he returned it to a specific place. So even if he didn't return to any designated place, we're still saying Rabbi Shmuel says you don't need the consent of the owner. But we have a problem. It says in the second clause of Mishnah, that if the now let's say the owner designated a place, and then he moved it, and it broke, whether it broke on his own, or whether after he put it down, it broke for his own needs, chayev. But if it was for the needs of the but if after he put it down, it broke for the needs of the barrel. He put it down for the needs of the barrel, and then it broke butter. So why is he going to be responsible in the case where he put it back? Why is he responsible? So this follows the position of Rabbi Akiva, who says "Bayin das barim" because he needs to tell the owner. So that follows the position of Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara says, well, first of all, Rabbi Akiva, if according to Rabbi Akiva, why even if they've designated the place, even if he didn't designate a place, he should be responsible. Even if he didn't designate a place, he should be responsible once he put it back. So the Gemara says, "Lo mi bay kamer." Not only this, it's a type of mission that's called a lo mi bay. Lo mi bay lo yichadu amakom. Not only in a place where he didn't designate it, that it wasn't its place. I feel yichadu ami. Even if he designated a place to Mekomahi, where he returned it to its own place, we need to tell the owner about it, or else you're going to be responsible. So now we have a problem. Reish Rabbi Shmuel V'Sefer Rabbi Akiva. So the first clause of the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel says we don't require the knowledge of the owner when we return a stolen object. And the Sefer Rabbi Akiva says we do. How does that make sense? Gemara explains, yes, that is actually the case. That is the case. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, because Rabbi Yochanan, who was one of the greatest sages of the time, but he said, whoever can explain to me this barrel, this Mishnah of the barrel, according to one Tana, I would carry his clothing after him to the bathhouse, meaning I would keep the place. I would view that person as my master, and I'd be a servant. Even if he just explained one Mishnah to me, we see the power of a teacher who just teaches us one little thing. We have to view that person for the rest of our life as our teacher. And Rabbi Yochanan, the greatest sage, perhaps, of the Talmud, says, I would carry his clothing. If he just taught me this one thing, how you can explain this Mishnah as being consistent with one opinion? Our explanation is that the Reish is Rabbi Shmuel, the Sefer is Rabbi Akiva. The first clause is Rabbi Shmuel, the second clause is Rabbi Akiva. He's saying, if anybody could explain to me how as one teacher, I would carry his clothing to the bathhouse. So now we have this. We have this out there. So we have some authorities who are trying to explain it according to one position. Tergima Rabbi Yaakov Barabba Kamei Derav. Yeah, I'll tell you how. You can explain it according to one position. So one approach is Shenata Almanas Lakozla. So there are three Amoraim who try to explain it according to Rabbi Shmuel, who say that we don't require the consent of the owner. And so basically, they're all going to explain the same approach, but they have a little bit of a different understanding as to what is the theft. So Rabbi Yaakov Barabba says the Mishnah in front of Rav, we're talking about a case Shenata Almanas Lakozla, that the shomer took it with the intent to steal it. And so therefore, in the latter case, why does he say you're responsible, even if you put it back? Because he had taken it to intent to steal it. And so since he had taken it with the intent to steal it, he had to return it completely. But if he took it just with the intent to use it or to borrow it, that's not going to be considered a theft. And so therefore, he doesn't have to return to the exact place that the owner designated it. That's how Rashi explains it. Tirgama, Rav Nosson Barabba Kamei Rav Shenot Lamanasal Shloch Bayat. No, he took it with the intent to misappropriate. And so since he took it with the intent to use for a little bit and not to steal it, which is wrong, you're not allowed to misappropriate, then he's also going to be responsible to return to its exact place. But okay? What's the dispute? The dispute is whether or not if a watchman misappropriates a deposit, he's going to be responsible for own sin, for accidents, like a case of a robber. Even if whether or not he's only responsible if it has some loss to the object. Manda Amar goes according to the first approach of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Abba, who says that he took it with the intent to steal it. He says he says that if you misappropriate, you're only going to be responsible if it has some sort of loss. Manda Amar Shloch Bayad, and the one who says the second approach of Rabbi Nosson Bar Abba, he says he took it to misappropriate it. And that itself is theft. That itself is theft. And so therefore the shomer, the watchman, is responsible right away, even if he didn't take away any money. So Maskefle Rav Sheshes, so Rav Sheshes challenges both approaches on both of them. He says, why do you say that we're talking about this case of theft? Midei Netala Katani doesn't say he took it, Tiltala Katani. It says he moved it, meaning to say he moved it for its he just moved it for the purpose of the barrel. So why do we say it's the concept of theft? Elam Rav Sheshes. So therefore, Rav Sheshes gives a third approach. Our Mishnah is talking about a case to go in Shetel Tolal Aviala Gozlos. He moved the barrel so that he could go on it to get the pigeons. He had to get the pigeons down from wherever the high spot, and so he moved the barrel for that reason. So he didn't intend to misappropriate or steal it because Savar. And so he borrowed it. So what's the case of somebody who borrows an object without the consent of the owner? Somebody who borrows an object without the consent of the owner, is that person going to be considered a gazon have? Is that person going to be considered a robber? He's in the position that since he borrowed it without permission, he's a robber, and so therefore he's responsible for all these accidents. So if that's the case, according to all these approaches,
jumps from the barrel designated place.
So that's what they're going to explain. Explain right now. So therefore, they're going to say Kula Rabbi Shmoli. That this is all following the position of Rabbi Shmuel, and we're talking about a case that the latter case is Seifa Shenicha Makom Sheino Makoma. The latter is talking about a place where the barrel was in its wrong place, and so therefore he didn't return it, so he's not exempt. But in the Reish, in the first clause, since they didn't designate a specific place, every case is its place, and so therefore it's a Shava Gemura. So we're saying on the middle of 41a that if he returns it to the place where, since the guy didn't designate a place, Rabbi Shmuel says if you borrow something without permission, you steal something, you don't have to return it to the exact place. So since the guy didn't have a place, therefore he's returned it, and so therefore he's not responsible. And so therefore, why did Rabbi Yochanan say, if anybody can explain this Mishnah to me, I'll carry his clothes to the bathhouse? There's a very simple explanation. We're talking about a case where he stole it. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, Rabbi Yochanan says, I couldn't explain it like this. It says, Sinicha bimkoma mashma. He says, Sinicha implies that he put it back in its place. And so therefore, he didn't want to explain the Mishnah that he put it in another place. So now the Gemara says, the Gemara now goes back to the fundamental discussion, whether or not if you misappropriate something, you're considered a thief, even if you didn't take away any of its value. So that's where on the bottom of 41a, Gemara says on the bottom of 41a, let's say actually, what? No, around 15 lines in the bottom of 41a. In Mar, we learned, so So there's a dispute amongst them Amoraim on this matter. Rav Levi have dispute. And if you want to say that somebody is responsible for misappropriation as though they stole it, one says no. It's only in a case where the shlichus yad, where the misappropriation cost something to the item that you depreciated it. Now you're not respond that once you take it, even you're considered a thief, even if you didn't cause it to lose money, even if you didn't cause the object to depreciate. This time the Rav who the Amr shlichus yad ain't a tzricha kasar. Let's say Rav is on a position that if you take it without permission, if you're supposed to be watching it, you got deposited with you a gold Rolex and you tried it on, you misappropriated it even though you didn't depreciate it. So Rav is one who says you don't need to cause it to depreciate in order to be responsible, to be considered a thief. And Levi is the one who says it needs depreciation. Let's see what happens. The time we have a brisa. Roa Shaya, Roa Edro. Let's say you have a shepherd who's watching his flock. And he says, let me leave the flock and I'll come to the city. And a wolf comes and tears apart his flock. And the lion comes along and tears apart his flock, pater. So then he's going to be exempt because the wolf or the lion, these are unforeseeable accidents, and the watchman is exempt for that, unless he be a borrower. But let's say the shepherd left his stick or his bag on top of it, on top of the animal. So he was misappropriating the animal for his own purposes. He was using it, and then the wolf or the lion came. Chayev, he's going to be responsible because basically he was misappropriating, and misappropriation is a thief, so you're responsible for accidents. And we question this. Why is he going to be responsible? Because he left his stick or his pouch, his bag upon the animal. He removed it before the animal came, and so therefore, why is he responsible? So Amar Nachman, Amar Baravu, Amarav, we're talking about a case, but Odan Aleh, we're talking about a case where the stick or the pouch is still on it, and so therefore, since he didn't return it, we're going to say he's like a thief and he's responsible. So the Gemara asks, well, I don't care if it's still on it. Hello, Mashcha. He didn't pull the animal towards him. He didn't acquire it. Why is he considered a thief? So Amarav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Amarav Sheiki Shebamako. No, he caused the sheep to move because he struck it with the stick, and so the rod's still upon him. So that was that basically Mashiach. He caused the sheep to run towards him. So he did the kinyan. So again, what's the case here? The guy has the guy is a shepherd. He puts his stick or his pouch on the animal, thereby acquiring it by causing it to hit him, run to him. And so therefore, while that happened, he left his stick or pouch on the animal, and a wolf or lion came along and killed it. So we're going to say under those circumstances he's responsible. The Gemara says, but why? The animal, how did he steal it? The animal didn't lose any value by having the stick or the pouch on it. He didn't cause it to lose any value. So Elash Mamina. So we see from here. So we see from here that this is the position, that this is how Rav interprets the Mishnah and the Brisa. So we see from here Rav is of the position that if you misappropriate it, you don't have to actually cause any loss in the object. You're considered a thief at that point. You're responsible for accidents. So the Gemara says it's possible. That's not necessarily the case the way Rav explains the Brisa. That's not necessarily the case. Maybe we're talking about a case where that you did cause the animal chisar. You did cause the animal that you used without permission to have a loss, because since you hit the animal and the shepherd struck the animal to get it to move towards him, that was how he actually had caused it to deteriorate. He hit it too hard, and so therefore there is a loss. And they can indeed we can infer this. It says Sheikhisha b'mako. How did he get it to come to him? He hit it with a stick. He didn't just say he hit it stam. He didn't just say he hit it. He hit it with a stick. He hit it too hard, and so therefore that's where he did cause the animal to be depreciated, and maybe that's why Rav says it's considered to be a theft in that case. So maybe in general, Rav would say shlichus yad is not going to be considered a theft unless you actually diminish the value. Gemara says with the Rav, so therefore, so we see from here. In fact, we see the opposite, that Rav is going to be in the position that shlichus yad tzricha chaysaron. In order to be responsible for a thief, for something that you steal from a person, that there's depreciation, you need to have loss. From the fact that we say that Rav says that position, it must be that that Levi, who argues with Rav, is the one who says shlichus yad eina tzricha chaysaron. That you're responsible for misappropriation as though you're a thief, even if the animal doesn't appreciate it. So Gemara wants to know, what's the reasoning of Levi? My time of the Levi. What's the reasoning why Levi says you're responsible even if the animal doesn't depreciate? You're responsible as though you stole it if you misappropriate it. Like he says, the reasoning is like what Rabbi Yochanan said in Mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Norai. What did he say? Mishuna shluchus yad amura b'shomer sachar mishluchus yad amura b'shomer chinam. He says because you can't compare the misappropriation that's said in the Torah by the law of a paid watchman from the misappropriation that's said by an unpaid watchman. That by Shomer Chinam it says that you misappropriate it by an unpaid watchman. It says in the Torah that you misappropriate it for his own purposes, meaning to say he uses it for a need, meaning to say that to teach us that you had your own specific needs, and this teaches that he's responsible for accidents. And there's an additional verse, and as we'll see. And so therefore, that teaches us this idea that it needs to depreciate. And so since this shlichus yad that's mentioned by Shomer Sachar is extra, because you could have learned it out from the unpaid watchman, so therefore the pasuk teach us that even though there is no depreciation, you're going to be responsible for the accidents. So Levi's of the position that you don't need depreciation, whereas Rav is of the position you need depreciation by a case of misappropriation. And Rabbi Yochanan says, "Vani omer." What? You don't need intent to misappropriate. No. Do they say that there?
No.
No, you don't need intent to deplete. You just need depletion, depletion or.
He stood on it.
When he stood on it, he depleted it.
On a brook.
We're not up to. Oh, you mean the barrel earlier? It doesn't matter whether you have intent as a thief or not. If you took it and you need intent to misappropriate it,
right,
not the intent to deplete it. Right, you need intent to misappropriate it, not the intent to deplete it. V'ani omer, whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, "Eina mishuna," that there's no difference between the misappropriation by an unpaid watchman and a paid watchman. Maybe to say, just like we need to teach us the idea that you're not allowed to that you're responsible for accidents if you misappropriate by an unpaid watchman, so too we need the same law by a shomer sachar, by a paid watchman. So the Gemara says, why does Rabbi Yossi? So we go back to what Rabbi Yossi said. He said that the verse by a shomer sachar is extra, and so therefore it's meant to teach us by a paid watchman that you're responsible even for a response that to tell us this idea that even if there's no depletion, you're still going to be responsible. So the Gemara says, "My mishuna, why is it extra?" Meaning to say, "Lo te'amar," you shouldn't say shlichus yad b'shomer sachar, because you shouldn't said that the misappropriation was said by a shomer sachar is responsible, that you're responsible by a paid watchman. Because you say maybe it didn't need to say by a paid watchman, and we're going to learn it out from a kal v'chomer from an unpaid watchman. Just like an unpaid watchman who is exempt by theft and loss. Nevertheless, that if you misappropriate, the Torah itself says yes, you're responsible. Shomer Sachar Shachai Begnei Vaveda. The unpaid watchman, where you are indeed responsible for theft and loss, will call Shekain. For sure, you should be responsible for if you misappropriated. So therefore, the whole verse by Shomer Sachar is extra. So what does the Torah tell us in both places? By also by Shomer Sachar as well. So that's why Yosef ben Harai says Shlichus Yad. It's the Torah telling us that it doesn't need depletion in order to say that you're responsible. Mani Omer, whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, I say Eina Meshuna, Rabbi Lazar, Damar David Achasi. I say it's not. It's not to teach us a chiddush. That it needs to say that both places because they're not extra. Why? It means that you need the Torah to tell us about the law of misappropriation by both an unpaid watchman and also by a paid watchman. My David Achas. So the Gemara says, means to say because we don't need it in either case. Because you could break the Kal V'chomer and say, you could say a Shomer Chinam, actually he's in some way stricter than a Shomer Sachar, because if the guy pays, if he claims it was stolen, and then he swears falsely, then we've discovered he has to pay double. Whereas if a Shomer Sachar swears falsely and he claims it wasn't stolen, doesn't matter. If he claims it was stolen, he doesn't have to pay double under those circumstances. So therefore, a Shomer Chinam is in some way stricter than a Shomer Sachar, because since he's exempt for theft, he can end up paying double, whereas the Shomer Sachar doesn't. Manu Parach, and the one who doesn't ask this question, he says you only need it in one case. You don't need it by Shomer Sachar, because he says even though you potentially could have a double penalty by a Shomer Chinam, which you couldn't have by a Shomer Sachar, we're still going to view the Shomer Chinam himself as more severe than the Shomer, as a Kal V'chomer from the Shomer Chinam to the Shomer Sachar, because having to pay the principal, i.e. the Shomer Sachar, without an oath is actually much stricter than having to pay the double amount with an oath. So a Shomer Sachar is for sure stricter than the Shomer Chinam, and so we for sure could have derived the laws of the Shomer Sachar from the laws of the Shomer Chinam. The Gemara says, okay, let's go back to the position of Levi, who says that you're considered a thief if you misappropriate an object, even though you don't deplete it. But you could explain his position even according to the position of Rebbe Lezer, who says you can't learn out of Kal V'chomer from Shomer Chinam to Shomer Sachar. Rava Amar Lo Te'amar Shlichus Yad Lo B'Shomer Chinam Lo B'Shomer Sachar. So he says we don't need it to sell us anything about a Shomer Chinam. We don't need to know this law of misappropriation. It's so obvious. Why? V'teisi Mishol. We could learn aloud. The Torah doesn't need to say it either by a Shomer Chinam or by a Shomer Sachar, and we can learn out from that the misappropriation is prohibited and is responsible as a thief from a borrower, because a borrower is somebody who's going to be responsible for accidents. Ma Shoel, just like a borrower, Dodas Balim Ka'avid, that the owner permits him to use the object, and nevertheless Shalch Bayad Chayev, that if he misappropriates it, he's going to be responsible. Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar, the Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar, who don't have permission to use it, will call Shekain. For sure, they're going to be responsible for the accident. So Lama Nemar. So why is the law of misappropriation said by Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar? If we could learn it by a borrower has permission and yet he's responsible for accidents. For sure, Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar don't even have permission. For sure, they're going to be responsible. So Chada, the verse appears by Shomer Chinam to tell us, and it's to tell us by Shomer Chinam that it doesn't require depletion, and also the Idach, and it says it by Shomer Sachar to tell us Shalot Tamar Dayo Lavomin Adin Lios Kenidan. It's to tell us that we shouldn't say that there's a limitation on the law that we learn from Shomer Chinam and from a borrower. Mashal bebalim pater. You might have thought, well, if you're just borrow it, but you borrow with the owner's permission, you're going to be exempt. I might have thought, Av Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar bebalim Potter. I might have thought that the Shomer Chinam and the Shomer Sachar who misappropriated without permission, and if the owner is there, they're going to be exempt. So therefore, it says Shlichus Yad by a Shomer Sachar to teach us that even if the owner was with him when he misappropriates it, he's going to be responsible. So why does it need to teach us in both places? First of all, to teach us this law that you don't require depletion, and second of all, to teach us this law that if you're the Shomer Sachar and the Shomer Chinam, that you're going to be responsible even if the owner is with him. And so therefore, that's why he says that's how Levi can work, even according to the position of Rebbe Lazar. So according to Rav, who says that in order to be responsible for misappropriating, then we're going to say that the Shlichus Yad requires depletion. Rav says in order to be responsible, you require depletion. So if that's the case, what's the reasoning why we have these two? What's the reason why we have these two verses by both Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar? You could have learned it out from the case of the borrower. So the Gemara says, just like the borrower, you require something to be diminished in order for you responsible. So the Gemara says, first of all, one is to tell us you shouldn't think you're exempt, just like you're exempt with the borrower. And what's the reason why we need the other verse? Kedetanya. It's to tell us another law that was taught in the Brisa. V'nikra ba'abayis Elohim, that it says by a Shomer Chinam who claims it was stolen by an unpaid watchman, and the witnesses say that he stole it, and so we say, how do we know? Shavua. Only if he had taken an oath, only if the unpaid watchman had claimed it was stolen under oath is he responsible to pay the double. If he didn't pay, if he didn't take an oath, he's not responsible for the double payment. But then, do we say that he requires an oath? Maybe only he's responsible for double payment, even if he claimed it was stolen before he took an oath, as long as he said it in the court. The Gemara says, it says misappropriation by both a Shomer Sachar and also by a Shomer Chinam. Just like by a Shomer Sachar, it means that if he did it under oath, that he didn't misappropriate it, so too by a Shomer Chinam, he's only responsible to pay double, also under oath. Okay, we'll stop the recording here. God willing, first of all, we'll pick this up tonight.